Israel has once again made it clear that it does not want a negotiation that merely freezes the conflict with Iran. The point now is not just to stop the shooting for a few days, the point is to prevent the enemy from preserving strength, reorganizing allies, and coming back stronger. And on April 22, 2026, Netanyahu is strongly emphasizing this point and making sure to make it clear. In a heavy attack on Iran's proxy in Lebanon, where the 10-day truce is already under pressure. While Washington tries to save the talks and Jerusalem insists it will not give up the campaign against Hezbollah, what happened? I'll tell you all about that in a moment, but right now you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed. Real-time information with the best journalistic quality you've ever seen from the trusted Milson Alvis. There was a truce announced on April 16th between Israel and Lebanon, mediated by the United States, to make way for negotiations for a more lasting arrangement. But the pause was fragile from the start. Israel maintained the idea of a security zone in southern Lebanon, did not agree to leave the occupied area immediately, and kept the argument that it can act in self-defense. On the other side, Hezbollah rejected any formula that gives total freedom of movement to Israeli forces inside Lebanon. The result is a ceasefire that looks like a tense pause, not real peace. Who is at the center of this? On one side, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli War Cabinet, who openly say that the goal is to weaken Hezbollah and consolidate a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. On the other side, Hezbollah, backed by Iran, which entered the war on March 2nd, just a few days after the United States and Israel launched an offensive against Iran on February 28th. In the middle is the Lebanese government, under pressure, amid the destruction in the territory, the need to negotiate, and the risk of internal confrontation with an armed group that remains powerful both militarily and politically. When and where has this become an even bigger problem? It did when the Lebanon front stopped being a parallel front and started directly interfering in the attempt at an agreement between Washington and Tehran. The talks between Israel and Lebanon were taken to Washington with the participation of United States officials. The United States and Iran have relied and still rely on Pakistan for mediation. And it remains stalled due to demands over uranium enrichment, naval blockade, and freedom of navigation. In other words, the crisis is not confined to just one border. It has spread between Tehran, Beirut, Jerusalem, Washington, and Islamabad. How is Israel acting? By handling the issue separately in a calculated way, Israel has accepted pauses in its direct confrontation with Iran at certain times. But it made it clear that this does not really apply to Hezbollah. Netanyahu even stated that he supports tactical ceasefire moves, but without giving up the war in Lebanon. This detail is decisive. Israel does not see Hezbollah as a side issue. It sees it as a military extension of Iran on its northern border. So, for Jerusalem, a negotiation with Tehran that preserves Hezbollah's capabilities doesn't solve the problem, it just postpones it. And why doesn't Israel really want to negotiate? In the classic sense of the word, because Israel's calculations are not the same as those of the United States. Washington is working to limit the damage, create room for dialogue, lower oil prices, avoid a larger shock, and try to extract nuclear concessions from Iran. Israel operates with a different logic. If the enemy still has missiles, infrastructure, command, money, supply routes, and an armed allied group on the border, then the threat is still alive. For the Israeli government, an agreement that leaves this power base standing can be worse than a war. Now, this is where the historical explanation comes in. For decades, Israeli security has operated with the idea of striking before the threat matures. Analistas chamam isso the Begin Doctrine, a reference to Israel's attack on Iraq's Osirak reactor in 1980. At the time, the action was condemned by international organizations, including within the UN Nuclear Agency. But the political message in Israel remained: do not wait for the enemy to reach the point where they become untouchable. This same logic is used by analysts to explain the 2007 attack on a Syrian facility suspected of nuclear links. Translating this to the current crisis, the message is simple and harsh. Israel does not trust that a signed document is enough to neutralize Iran and its allies. If Tehran maintains sensitive nuclear capability, if Hezbollah remains armed, and if the northern border continues under threat, Jerusalem understands that the negotiation has become just a useful pause for the other side to catch its breath. Diplomacy faces obstacles because the issue isn't just the agreement's text, but a total lack of trust. Israel's lack of trust that the agreement will last and that the enemy will be weakened. In fact, in Lebanon, this issue becomes even more significant. The truce mediated by the United States does not require the immediate disarmament of Hezbollah, which was a central demand of Israel. At the same time, Israeli troops remain in a strip of southern Lebanon. And the government in Beirut fears both the continuation of the offensive and the risk of a political explosion at home if it tries to confront Hezbollah head-on. Prime Minister Nawaf Salam said that the Lebanese state does not want confrontation with the group, but it will not accept intimidation either. This shows the size of the deadlock. Lebanon wants sovereignty, Israel wants total security, and Hezbollah does not accept being dismantled at the negotiating table. The cost of this formula is already steep. According to Reuters, more than 2,400 Lebanese have died since the escalation, and the south of the country has become an area of massive destruction and displacement. This helps explain why Paris, Washington, and other capitals are so active. The fear is not just humanitarian, it's strategic. The deeper Lebanon sinks, the harder it becomes to stabilize the border, the more room there is for radicalization, and the further away any lasting arrangement between Israel and Iran becomes. The Lebanese front is no longer secondary. It has become a central piece on the board. There is also the fact that war with Iran, the dispute over navigation and blockades around the Gulf have shaken the market and pushed the United States to try a diplomatic solution. But for Israel, the West's energy costs cannot matter more than its own survival calculus. This clash of priorities explains why Washington talks about an opportunity for an agreement, while Israel acts as if it sees a rare window to break the military backbone of the enemy, Tehran's allies. This is not a minor disagreement, it's a disagreement about the ultimate goal. In the end, Israel doesn't believe that negotiating today will eliminate tomorrow's threat. An outsider might call this rigidity, excess, or a constant reliance on force, but from the Israeli perspective, it's a cold calculation. Face it now while they still have superiority, or accept an agreement that might preserve the core of the problem. E aí está o fato. This weighs on the entire conflict. While the United States tries to manage the crisis, Israel tries to reshape the crisis by force. Without dismantling Hezbollah, without curbing Iran's strategic potential, and without changing the balance on the northern border, Jerusalem tends to treat any negotiation as incomplete, fragile, and ultimately dangerous. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with Milson Alves' community.